Hello everyone. Clif High recently released 2 videos on March 5th and one on March 7th. I am just getting to them now, so I will do the March 7th summary first because it is the latest video. They are both very similar and both worth listening to as always. Clif discusses the collapse of the dollar empire, proper thinking, goofy government responses, and how you need to get over and get wise to get beyond. Learning to embrace the woo. Woo is taking over and intruding into normie land. Some things will always be constant, like logic that connects all the dots, and those dots can be validated to a significant degree. Don't put energy, time, and money into strange schemes like Nasara Gassara, the Iraqi dinar. The external savior myth is usually a false one. Clif talks about Charlie Ward. He says, I'm not familiar with Ward, so I will just repeat what Clif said. Ward was born into a religious cult, claims he has a PhD in psychology, however, no evidence of this is present. He supplied young girls to Jimmy Savile of the BBC. Clif is skeptical that this guy is the mouthpiece of the planet. Clif also says there is no quantum financial system. The bribe infrastructure. The bribe infrastructure is going to collapse, and that will eliminate a lot of the core corruption. This will return us to a level of reality that we have not seen for a long time. When our financial system collapses, the powers that be who thought they were protected will realize the extent of the damage being done to their structures. The CCP will be making a bunch of mistakes when this happens. Won't be able to get physical gold and physical silver soon. More on this later. The rules of woo. This is the main point of Clif High's talk on this video. So rule 0, there are no rules, there's only discovery. And then the next rule is discoveries only last as long as they last. As woo intrudes and money doesn't buy anything, there are no rules. You have to discover what works through this period. Clif says this will lead to the Kondratiev crack-up boom, the end of the effective span of the dollar. Kondratiev was a brilliant Russian economist who worked for Stalin. For the first time, we are going to have the collapse of the world reserve currency. Countries that store wealth in dollars are going to lose all of that wealth. Promised resets are all bogus. Nasara, Gassara, etc. Clif warns not to waste your precious time, energy, and money trying to participate in these resets. Over the next 10 years, we will see that those diversions of energy will become your undoing if you try to participate in these resets. Localize around people that are intent on developing stability. Clif explains that the woo we are about to see is something we have never been through in modern times. The closest thing is the collapse of the Byzantine Empire. However, this pales in the spread of effect. It took centuries for the impact to roll out. Due to modern communications, we will be in a time when things change constantly. Even if you discover a rule that a certain amount of silver trades for a certain amount of cars, that rule could change very quickly. Clif says we must adopt first principles thinking and go from solid point to another solid point and clean out the corruption as we go along. Clif uses the example that the Big Bang didn't happen because if it did, we would have entropic energy and galaxies around us. There is none, hence the Big Bang is bogus. Clif talks about the Biden administration has little power and therefore the states that supported him are on their own. Clif calls this hollow power that cannot extend outwards, which is why the democratic states are in such a tailspin. The Cultural Revolution and Wokeianism has been marching through the established institutions for decades, not to mention the CCP. These people are about to run into the first-time resistance and repulsion by all the people that are constitutionalists. Clif makes it clear that he uses the term constitutionalist because he does not want to use mainstream media terms like patriot that has negative connotations. A constitutionalist is defined as someone who supports the Constitution as a social construct. Mainstream media will collapse very early on in the game, and a lot will be exposed by the collapse. Clif mentions that there is not much energy in the Biden administration, which is evidenced by no one wanting to watch him. Even now, Trump is the opposite, with hundreds of thousands of people showing up to watch him. The crumbling of the Biden administration is accelerating. Clif says, sound money equals a sound society. We are effed from 1910 onward. I believe he's referring to the creation of the Federal Reserve. Clif says that he thinks Bix Weird from the road to Ruta is correct in that the Grand Canyon and other areas are filled with gold. We are forced into a silver standard, and there is not enough silver on the planet to have a silver standard. Technology makes silver go further, but we may have to abandon it as a monetary unit. Woo rules for the rest of the decade. Government responses to problems are going to be goofy. Responding to the crisis of the moment will expose government incompetence. Their base of thinking will be so shattered, what they are proposing will not carry much further than the mainstream media repeating it once. Will not have any weight or influence. Governments in the best of times are backwards looking. The mainstream media calls them leaders, but they are more poor managers. We will have to endure the goofy response period of governments. Clif explains that they will always be chasing backwards because things can change so quickly, they will constantly have to rethink. They will just take a plan and shoehorn something into the situation. A lot of them will be motivated by greed and corruption. We will always have to ask ourselves, will they be acting to extract money from the system and or just to cover their own asses? The collapse of the money system will expose that no leaders are prepared to deal with. Don't bother with retribution and revenge. Clif makes that point very clear. So make our own rules. Who can you depend on? What are you going to do if a certain situation happens? Total systemic collapse is likely. Normies will be blindsided. There are no rules, only discovery. Have to discover immediacy stuff like getting a generator, but also thinking about what is required to maintain the generator. Money is going to be up and down all around. Prices are going to be totally wonky. This will expand to all governments, local and national. The legal system will break down. We are living in woo rules, which is not good for people with certain mindsets. Progressive linear mindsets. Woke people, Clif calls Wokians. He says that there will be a massive cognitive dissonance and they will be in denial. These people will suffer the most and will need to adapt internally. This will cause a great schism in the West. Clif explains it's not worth your time engaging these people because things are changing so fast. Death Morte from the Vax. Anyone that is in denial of this needs to get over it. Discovery lasts only as long as it lasts. Food shortages are likely, but due to distribution, not food creation. We have an ice age moving in, and we will see more weather events coming in. Clif states that the amount of 90 to 95-degree weather days have declined rapidly in the last 20 years. Magnetic motors. Clif urgently warns that we need to adapt to the ice age if we are going to preserve the current amount of people on the planet. Wealthy woo people have said to Clif, if you can get the distributed power infrastructure to be viable, they will back it financially. Clif mentions Nikola Tesla, who had 15 magnetic motor type patents. The key limitation in Tesla's time that we do not have now is that the magnets he was working with were not very good. The neodymium magnets and ceramic lattice magnets we have are far superior. If we apply our magnets to Tesla's patents, this could be the answer to distributed power generation. Clif points out Tesla was a radical atheist, all of which he got from a book, A Theory of Natural Philosophy. You can buy it on Amazon. I bought it and it is totally over my head. Clif ends with saying we can't let the denial aspects take us. We will naturally face the grief of dwelling on how things were, but can't linger there too long. That's it, that's all. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to go to wooworldnow.com and sign up for important updates.